to the 24th of July here on TJM Farming. My name is Noah, this is Bindi Sue, and you join us in the Kubota on a lovely afternoon. We've just received about 15 mil of rain last night. Pretty disappointing because we were supposed to get 10 to 15 mils 2 days in a row, but we only got one lot of 15 mil. What can you really do? Farm work has quietened down a little bit, but we're just going to go around with the GoPro and show you what's been going on since I've last picked up the camera. First of all, this is a hay crop. This is hospital paddock 1, that's hospital paddock 2 over there. Now, by the time you'll watch this will probably be released in August. If you've watched the TJM Farming Seeding Extravaganza 2025, you would know that we ploughed these 2 paddocks right here, and we had a couple of blockages. I do believe this was on 1 or 2 of the rows on the combine. It's 28 runs. You can see these runs, good. Sputtering going on there, sputtering going on there, sputtering going on there. Yeah, that's where the rows were starting to block up, and you can see the lack of seed coming out through here. Bindi, stop eating the crop. Now, compared to the crop next door on Liz and Peter's place that I helped to seed, that was planted about a week before we put this in the ground, that's already up and it's got 2 leaves on it. Well, our crop is definitely out of the ground. You can see that we still got a lot of rocks to pick up. The rock picker only made more of a mess in here than it did any good. I still need to unhook that from the loader. These are some of the oat plants here. That's a bit of ryegrass that should have been killed off. Most of the plants here, you can see they've got 2 leaves. One of the things that I've also noticed, because this paddock is the roughest of the lot, where the rocks have been pulled up with the plough is also where the combine's been experiencing some blockages. It's all over the shop. To tell you honest truth, I'm starting to wish that we just went straight in with the combine instead of with the plough, even though I did enjoy doing tillage work. See dirty big ruts that were all left with the plough compared with the smoother finish from the combine. This is the seeded gateway, and this is the other paddock. This is the paddock that we also ploughed, and I did some test laps, but Dad finished off the rest of the ploughing in this paddock and he left me to do that one over there. Now, because this is mostly sand and it's not rocky and there's not as many trees and obstacles to deal with, this one's actually come up a lot smoother. You can see all the rows are coming up nicely. I do apologise for the wind noise on the camera, and the visuals are not as high as I want them to be. I sent my new GoPro off to GoPro support to get fixed. They're going to send me a replacement, which should be due in about a week or 2's time. Much like that paddock over there, this one, the oats in here, they've got 2 leaves up now. So if we're relating this to those more used to virtual farming than the real thing, this stage with the 2 leaves, this is what you'd usually call that growth stage number 2 growths, which is after you've seen it, that's stage 1. Stage 2 is the 2 leaves coming out of the ground. Now, we know because we planted this late, this crop has a lot of catching up to do compared to most of the other crops in the district, a lot of which are already tillering, and some of the canola crops and lupin crops, they're already flowering. But then all of those crops, depending on the time of year, you can tell when certain paddocks have been sown compared to others. It's the difference in the height of the crop, what stage the crop is at, and the time frame that they were planted in. There is still quite a bit of love grass around here as well. I'll probably need to come back with the loader to sort that out. So that has been crop watch for the hay crop. Now, on to some other updates before we head out the west end and do the second round of crop watch. Number 1, the air combine. That's the working title we've got for it at the moment. The 753. Overall, as you'd know, we had a couple of certain pipe heads busting 3 times in one go on this, sowing those paddocks and out the west end. How has the 753 performed? Overall, pretty good. it actually survived a lot better than we were expecting, which goes to show the build quality of these chamberlains. Now, concerning the liquid carts, as I stated, we have a 1500 litre tank. We had one ordered from Querco. At the time of recording this though, we still haven't heard back from Querco, so we don't know when it's gonna come. I did get Sean on the blower, and he reckoned that the IBC here held on with the super ratchet strap that has the strength of a welder. He reckoned that this was gonna fall through the frame. And he asked, is there anything holding it up? Well, yes, there is. This end and this end are balancing right across here. This is right around 1250 millimeters from there to there. Basically the same width as what the mounting for that tank on the Gayson air cart over there is. That's the same for this. Now, in regards to the frame here, there was a bracket here, which I'm assuming was linked up to the ground drive there that once upon a time ran that cart, which is hidden behind the rock trailer over there, the dismembered air seeder bin. This bracket and these bits of the frame here, these bits of metal, would have held up the air seeder tank part. However, to make the IBC stay put on here, we had to use multiple ratchet straps, wrapping it around the frame like that and right underneath, as well as over the top. Pull through? Nope, it's still sitting here. The shuttle has actually behaved itself the best out of the whole lot. Now, what's the plan going forward for the combine for next year? We're probably going to get some modifications done to this just to make it a bit more farm proof when we end up expanding on the cropping. Potentially some of these hoses will need to be replaced with more heavier duty stuff. We're thinking on tweaking the design of the tines down here so that we've got something more than just a zip tie holding the hoses on like this. You can also see bits of rust and whatnot all along the frame of the combine here. This is a 1986, so it's gonna be around 40 years old next year. So, because it's a pretty old piece of machinery and it's got a bit of rust on it, it needs a bit of TLC. I've always had it in mind, and I've said to Dad, even before we dismembered the cart that's over there from that chassis, that I wanted to make this a matching setup. That forward engineering pale green compared with the John Deere green on the tractor and the combine here. I know I said pine green for the Chamberlain. That's actually incorrect. This is John Deere green. It's just very faded because most of the life of this combine has been spent sitting out in the big blue shed. More importantly as well, we also notice with the press wheels back here, this middle bracket for this gang of press wheels in the middle here, that actually will not raise up with the rest of the machine like these other two gangs will, because these are held in with a hairpin. This pin right here, it's held in with one of these, and the middle one for this, we've lost it. So we're probably gonna need to fix that for next seeding. Otherwise, this may prove difficult, because later down the track, if we end up going and doing a whole expansionism phase where we go and lease some country, chances are we are going to need to move this down the road. We cannot move it down the road with the press wheels sitting on the ground like that, because it's just going to make a mess of the asphalt. As well as the points on this, many of them are very worn down, even the ones that we had to replace out the paddock. What we thought were brand new spares actually turned out to be some rather worn ones that were just put aside. Well, they did the job, they got us through, but next year we're gonna need to put some different points on this because most of them are fairly worn through, and especially if we can't get a refinator in when we level the racetrack, there's gonna be some rocks, meaning that we're gonna need some stronger points than what we've currently got. On the topic of rust and restoration, however, because this combine is approaching 40 years old, this chassis is probably approaching 30 years old. It's probably around the same age as the tractor, and the tractor itself, both of our working condition tractors are going to be celebrating milestones in 2027. Little Red is going to be turning 20, and the Johnny will be turning 30. There's 10-year gap between them. Next year, because I stated this is going to be the Flashest combine in Western Australia, it needs to look the parts as well as being practical, meaning that it's time, well, we need to blow all the dust and dirt off this, get a bunch of primer, sand down all the rusted spots as best we can in as many spots of this machine as we possibly can. We'll tape up over the decals there until such a time as we can get some more decals from somewhere, and we're going to give this a brand new paint job. John Deere green and yellow, make it look as close as it would have when it rolled out of Welsh Pool. And we're going to do a throwback, because remember back in part 2 of the seeding extravaganza where I mentioned the evolution of air seeders and combines. We used to have a 753 when Dad was my age starting out farming. He pulled it behind a 4480 bead Chamberlain. That 753 had a yellow lid, similar to what the John Deere grain drills over in the United States would have had around the same time. This one's got a green one. Now, some people may say, oh, well, why not just leave it as is in its original condition? I say, let's change it up a bit. When we go and paint this up, we'll preserve as much of the original decals as we possibly can and put new ones on where necessary. But the lid's gonna need some work as well, because we need some new straps for it. But the lid, I reckon we'll throw some yellow, make it look like a retro setup. That's step number 1 of the restoration projects with this paint. Step number 2, we'll see in just a minute. The Johnny. This tractor needs no introduction. This is our 1997 John Deere 7810. We originally called this the Little Johnny or Little Green. At the time we called this the Little Johnny or Little Green, it's because we had a big green, almost like a big brother for this, which was the 8760 tractor. The 8760, much like Big Blue, are both now sold off and on different farms. We don't have them anymore, so this is currently our biggest tractor. Now, the 7810, for most of its life, has been the main mid-range workhorse. Originally, I stated that this was 175 horsepower, when in actual fact, and I learned this because I spoke to a mechanic at AFGRI down at the hub, because of the oil filters here, and these are the screw-ons, we actually learned that this is a 7.6 litre engine, meaning that this one is actually 150 horsepower, which is about 25 horsepower less than what I thought it was. The primary purpose for most of this tractor's life has been on the plows, on the combine. It briefly ran the Mark III for a bit, as well as the air seeder, and then for the majority of its working career, it was on the sprayer. It was only on this for the past 5 years since we've had the Gold Acres, but before then, its partner in crime was always that Hardy over there. As a result of that, we never really kept the sprayer under cover all of the time. The Hardy did have its own shed on Quartermains, however that got destroyed in the cyclone, and by that time we had to squeeze this tractor in the super shed with this behemoth of a sprayer. But since then, because this tractor's life has mostly been spent out in the sun doing lots of hard work, again, it's been in the Big Blue shed, meaning that it's got some wear on the paint. As you can see on the weight bracket, there's a bit of rust here, some rust down on the front axles, and most importantly, on the right-hand side fender to the cab here. And when I said that I wanted to paint up the seeder, I meant the combine, the tank, and the tractor. This is something that I wanted to do with the 8760 as well, but I never got the opportunity to, because I never had the funds on my own to get the paint, nor did I have the time because I had school on at the time. We do sort of have the funds now, but we can't do it to the 8760 because we've only got the 7810. Because the 7810 is our only big tractor, we need to make sure that it looks the part and is well looked after. That means eventually we're going to need to restore the 7810 to its original condition sooner or later, which means wash all of the grime off, grind all this rust off the fuel tank, off the fender, off the weight bracket, and off the step ladder, and eventually, because you can see in the cab here as well, yeah, Another common thing about old tractors like this that are here to work and mainly work and not looked after very well, the paneling for the cab has also started to fall down. The Big Green had this problem too. If I remember correctly, I'm not sure if I included it in the actual video or not, but during Kelly chaining in 2021, there was a part where the paneling for the ceiling, but on the big 8760 tractor, it started to fall down on me and I was getting dust covered while going around the paddock. So I went back and got some tech screws and tech screwed into the film here into the padding on top of the cab to try and keep it level. It was around this side of the cab, just a much larger tractor, not this one. I know I've seen some videos out there of other farmers across the world looking after tractors around the size and age of this one. In particular, the Welker's 7140 a couple of years ago, I know that they completely stripped the padding out of that old tractor and got an aftermarket kit, and they completely took all of the paneling out, took the seat out, gave it a real good clean down, and then they put the new paneling in and it looked like a brand new tractor. Eventually, that's what I want to do with this one. However, doing one for this specific model of tractor, in this specific configuration with the digital dashboard and this specific gearbox, they're actually rather hard to come by, especially for the older 1997 model. If you were doing something like a 1998 or 2001 model, it'd be easy because there's plenty of them available. But because this is one of the first 607810s to be made, as we learned when we tried to get a fuel pipe for this, it's non-standard anymore and John Deere don't make the parts for it. It's going to be the plan. Hopefully before the crop gets to the stage where we need to cut it for hay, I want to give this tractor a really good scrub down and do a bit of paint work to it. We won't touch the interior for this year until such time as we can find the proper paneling kit for the interior. And hopefully by the time that we do a proper interior restoration on this tractor, we'll hopefully have a dome or some kind of other larger shed to whack this undercover while we do it. The trouble with doing that on farms like ours, where we've only got that shed as our storage, it's extremely difficult to keep our tractors looking nice and clean. And as I stated in part one of the seeding extravaganza, sheds are bloody expensive at the moment. That was part two of the painting plan. Now, we needed a test dummy to test some primer and some paint out. And I've shown him having his paint treatment be done. Let's go over to the shed and let's see what the paint job currently looks like on Little Red. Oh boy. Just a word of warning, this is the first time I've painted a tractor. So mistakes are going to be made, and it was only halfway through priming the thing that I actually went and got some wet and dry and some actual tape. So don't laugh, I'm an amateur, I'll fix it. This is what the tractor's looking like at the moment. Okay, so the initial plan was, originally, the back end of the tractor, you could still see quite a bit of the rust here, and particularly the sunroof. The sunroof was the one that I wanted to do the most, but I can't get up there, and now I can't because I don't have the primer. The initial plan was just to touch up the fender here, along the side, and do part of the bonnet, because there was a bit of fading around the top here. I thought I did a good job, so I tried to do a bit more. But a bit more got a bit out of control, and what was supposed to preserve the original decals only smudged it. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess right now, but then Little Red doesn't really mind, I hope, because it's gonna get dirty anyway. So look, when we do a proper service on the tractor, I'll take the hood off, we'll give it a proper respray. I'll even pay $206 excluding the postage to get a new set of decals in from Europe just to do it properly down the road. But this is basically the experiment. Did some primer on the hood here, did a top coat, then I tried to fix up some spots that didn't look right with this edging here, and it got a bit out of control. The primer went underneath the sticky tape, this painter's tape, So yeah, the bonnet doesn't look the best, I must admit. However, the fender is actually looking quite good from a distance. There was a bit of chipping, nothing much I can really do about it, but yeah. The whole point of me repainting Little Red was to try out this Rust-Oleum paint. Because, first of all, okay, Rust-Oleum may not be the best for certain jobs, but we can easily get a whole lot of cans of the stuff. It's fairly cheap in the grand scheme of things, and it comes in the colours of the farm machinery, particularly IH Red, which is what we put on the red here. I did try to fix this, but I ran out of primer. The final bit of primer that I did was along the fender here. There used to be a whole lot of rust along here. That was all sanded down, but this was done with just a single spray. I tried not to overlap, and it came out pretty good. I did all this kind of in a bit of a rush because, well, we knew that rain was going to be in the forecast and all this other jazz, but it was an experiment. It may have failed, and I might need to pay quite a decent amount of money just to get some new decals for the side of the tractor to make it look nice again. I mean, from the outside, at least the back fender looks good. When we go to do the combine and the actual Johnny tractor, I'm gonna have to have Dad supervising me so that we can do this properly. But yeah, look, that was the first experiment on Little Red Tractor. The reason why we used Little Red Tractor as the experiment, I needed to do it anyway, and to put it lightly, it's gonna get filthy pretty bloody quickly when it goes back to work, so you probably won't notice it. That's the reason why I chose that tractor in particular. Now, you know what? It's time to talk about the sheep. Over there. There's the dry ewes, and then that next paddock are the rams. I kid you not, despite those ones being the dries, they can no longer reproduce. They're speed dating through the fence. They're trying to chat with the boys, and as a result, they're not going over to the self-feeder to be on the pellets. That's to be expected, actually, because, like it or not, originally we were planning to keep the rams in the paddock surrounding the house, but if we did that, we knew that the dries were gonna go camp near the rams anyway, and instead of over here, they'd be up the other end of the paddock. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. But yeah, here you go. There's the girls. They're camping near the rams over there. I haven't been out to the rest of the farm due to the raining conditions over the past couple of days, so let's go check on the mums and lambs and the crop, especially the crop. Let's go see what's going on with that. Every farm has their magical way of telling if you're having a good year or not. For Tara, in that instance, it's the Magic Creek. For us, it's this swampy country. Once upon a time on the old farm, it used to be Nelly Creek itself. If it was flowing, you know that we were in for a really good year and that rain was coming. And on our first year on Erinvale, this was a pond, because this is all our swampy marsh, all our marshy country, and normally this time of year, if it's really, really wet, you'd need a boat to get through here. We've got some puddles, which is good, but yeah, not as high as it should be. Yeah, we've definitely had a bit of rain here too. Since the last time we've been in here, Dad's gone through with the sprayer and he sprayed Nutrisoil on this paddock, and Racetrack North as well, and Clark Road. This is basically spreading fertiliser onto the pastures. Right now, I think Dad shifted the sheep around a bit so that this paddock is resting. That paddock's still in use. Clark Road should be back in use, and Racetrack North as well, I think. So the maidens are still in Pine Tree over here. There they are. Hello, girls. There's wool ewes in North Racetrack, and the frames are in Clark Road once again. Okay, so here's the wolves over here. They're up having a good old feed. There they all are. Lambs are running around. down now, that's good. That means, well, they've certainly recovered from the tailing cradle, which is really good. Glad to see that. Everybody's looking all good. Feed. The feed's okay in here. I wish it could be higher. It needs to be at least up to where the bottom of the Kubota fender there is. It needs to be up to that height around this time of year normally, or it should be by September. But for the past 2-3 years, it hasn't. And that's due to two things. One is the green drought, which is, sure, it may be green, but the feed is very low. And two, we may have had a lot of lambs in 2022 and they ate the place out. That's the reason why it's taken so long to recover. But there they all are. They're all sticking as a group. That's good. That's what we like to see. You've got a couple of lambs on their own. They might be twins. Yep, there's their ewe. Speaking of ewes, Karen and her lamb, which were the only two left in Northwest, because they refused to leave. We couldn't get them out of the trees for the life of us. Well, they're not in Northwest anymore. And the reason for that may be because of a hole in the fence. They might have gone into the bush reserve and then come through another hole in the fence to join the wolves here. We haven't found any long-tailed lambs, so she might have joined this mob again. We don't know. Crop watch part 2. This is the first time that we've been out to see the crop since I last went out the paddock with Dad, which was around about half a week ago. All of that paddock looked brown from a distance because of the soil. Has it changed in colour? Yes it has, very slightly. The paddock behind me is our seed crop. The outer headlands are oats, and all the rest of the seeded bit in the middle, that's all barley. The rest of the green stuff that doesn't look like it's been planted by a machine, that's all the pasture that we've let rest while we've got the crop in here. We're going to allow all that patchy sandy stuff to get some seed up, set seed and recover for next year. You've seen us sow all this in the seeding extravaganza. This is what it's looking like at the moment. I think the outer headlands here, these are the oats. A lot of them have 2 leaves on them, that is good. And I think most of the strip in through there, that's all the barley. Since the last time we've been here, it's coming up really well actually. Strips along here, got at least 2 leaves on them. I think somewhere along here were the runs that I did. Probably up there somewhere. That's probably one of the strips I did that nothing came out. Yep. That strip right there. I'm pretty sure one of these was one of the ones that I did. This is barley over here. These 3 runs here are supposed to be oats. Now I know on the innermost pass for the oats we ran out at some point, which actually looking at it is probably right around here. You can see that it's very strippy in some places because these rows are growing, but these ones over here are not. I think this is a sole survivor of the blue lupins. One of the things that I love about this paddock that made it one of our best was that plants like this specimen right here, the blue lupin plants, when the sheep were struggling to have feed to graze on in 2023, 2024 during the summer, Northwest was our secret weapon. And the reason for that is because we had this paddock locked up briefly, and so the blue lupins all set the seed. Didn't grow much over the summer, but springtime 2024, because it set the seed, came up all green all up along that hillside over there. Now between 2024 and 2025, so the summer just gone, the sheep ate all that down again, which allowed us to come through and spray the pre-merge. Here we can see from a slightly better angle what the crop's looking like facing away from the sun. It still mostly looks like a brown hill, and it will look like that until the crop gets up high enough that it starts tillering. But we need a lot more rain than what we currently had to make that happen. Now this strip over here, this is the unsprayed stuff. Once again, a bit difficult to tell where the sprayer had gone and hadn't gone because of all the GPS nonsense that we had to put up with. This is the type of stuff we would have been looking at if we hadn't gone and put pre-emerge down. As you can see, it is green, but because the weeds are there, it's probably going to get choked out. This is the kind of thing we were dealing with when we planted the oats in Pine Tree Paddock back in 2023. Good evening everyone, Editing Noah here. At the time of recording this, part 1 of the seeding extravaganza has gone live, and I've got what we can consider to be the second edition this year of Fighting the Comments. First of all, thank you to everyone who's commented on these videos so far. I do read them, and I'm going to reply to them briefly. First of all, Sean says, get a Panther for 30k, easy to repair, parts still available. Good point. In terms of for a second tractor, as I stated in that video, a front wheel assist is more expensive than an older four-wheel drive. Well, we were actually looking at Facebook Marketplace and we did see an ST320, I think it was a Steiger Panther or a Tiger, that was going for 15 grand and it was down near Northam, but it needed a new starter motor. And let me tell you, this was straight after seeding, and I was extremely tempted to say, let's go get it. But we had to hold down the fort because other costs came in the way first. But yes, the next tractor we'll probably get on the farm will most likely be an older four-wheel drive. It's always been my ambition to buy back the channel's poster boy, Big Green, the 8760, because the current owners of it, they did promise that if they one day ever sell it, to let us know firsthand. So if I have the money at the time, I'll go back up to Canna and reclaim the tractor of TJM Farming that has been there from the beginning. But the Steiger Panther, those are also very good tractors, and that was actually the second option that Dad would have gone for in 1996 when he was looking at the tractors. It was between a Steiger Panther or Big Green. That's his two options, and he went for Big Green because it was a younger tractor. He had a feeling it would last longer without needing a completely new engine in it. Yeah, that's up for consideration. Next up, we got Scare West, who says, you mean you are harvesting not to sell, but use as seed for next year? Yes. Yes, we are. And the reason for that is because this is a practice that most farmers in Western Australia, particularly cereal grain growers, that's a tactic we mostly do, because unlike farmers in the United States where they have like Pioneer seed and all these different genetically modified seeds which are actually patented, so that even though the farmer buys the seed and grows it, they don't actually own the seed, forces the farmers to sell them, and they can't use that seed again for next year. In Australia, however, because when we own the seed, we own it outright, so we can plant it, we can store it in the silo. If we really wanted to, we could feed it out to sheep if we were desperate for feed. But no, yeah, that's the plan. The seed that we're going to harvest at the end of this year, much like what a lot of farmers do across the board in Australia in the event of a drought year, when you do not get enough seed to sell, that's what we call getting our seed back, which means you get enough seed in the header box to unload into the truck to take back to the silo. You put it in the silo, and that's one less cost you have to put in the budget for next year. That's what we're going to do. Now for this edition of Fighting the Comment, this person here says, how was your dad so big? No trying to be rude, but looks like you guys have gone back big time. Droughts weren't that bad. WA has had best 6 years on record.
You serious?
Okay, look, where have these best 6 years been in WA on record? I'm sure myself, Dad, and all 3,000 other registered sheep and grain producers in Western Australia would love to know where that 6 best years on record have been. And second of all, no trying to be rude. Yeah, nah, sorry mate, you are being rude by going out and directly saying that you gone back big time. For those who don't know, we've only owned Erinvale for about 3.5-4 years. And before we owned this place, it was a lifestyle block. We've only owned this since about 2022. That's when the handover date was. Before that, and I made 26 videos on this, we had a farm up in Canna, Western Australia that went by many names. Friends of the area would know it as Mugawogga or M.I.A. That's what we called it. But at the time, I was trying to be anonymous about the whole thing, and the internet name I gave it was Nelly Creek, after the section of the Irwin River that used to go directly through the northern half of the farm next to the block that was called Nelly's or M.I.A. That's where the name Nelly Creek came from. When I talk about hit and miss areas, this is when I'm talking about dry land farming, which is most of what the farmland in Western Australia is like. Our weather patterns are dictated by what we call the IOD. This is what the farmers on the east coast of Australia would have to deal with, like La Nina and El Nino. That's weather systems that determines whether rain is going to come from the Pacific Ocean or the Indian Ocean. So you got your troughs, your highs, your lows, etc. That's what the meteorologists, that's more of their department in this type of discussion. Now, the reason why we call it hit and miss is because not every cyclone comes across the coast in the same pattern. You also got to remember that WA is the biggest state in Australia by landmass size. This includes the farming districts. Most of the farming land is cut off by all, like, your mountain ranges, so like Bluff, Knoll and the Stirling ranges, etc. The mountain range is actually what stops the rain just crossing the coast entirely and hitting it all in one big swoop. You've got to remember that WA is a pretty bloody big place, very different landscape. So while farms like Erinvale have very sandy soils, compared to Nelly Creek, which is only, what, a couple of hours drive up the road up north in Canna. Completely different soils, completely different rainfall, completely different districts. I don't need to state the entire history of Nelly Creek, otherwise we'd be here all night and this video would go on and on and on and on, and I'd be slapping my face when I go to edit all of this. But in a nutshell, Sean put it best in the comments below that. Last year was doable. 22 was a wipeout, 19 was worse, and that's the Central Midlands, which is where we're currently based. Canna is right on the edge. He is correct. If we stayed on Nelly Creek, we still would have had a pretty bloody big overdraft, and in 2023, no doubt we would have been wiped out. 2022 was extremely wet. That's the reason why we were in a rush to get all our gear off the farm, and why the mess over there surrounding the sea containers, why that all hasn't been packed away. Because it was so wet that Bruce the forklift, the Toyota forklift that I briefly made one short about on YouTube and Instagram, that got bogged after doing one job here. And so we put it back on the truck and sent it back up to Canna to load stuff there. But even on the bedrock on top of the hill on Nelly Creek, outside the workshop, it still got bogged because it was that bloody wet. But something that I still stand by to this day, and I've said it from day one when we bought this place, we're still setting up, and that's the truth. We always said that renovating this farm was going to be a long-term project. That's the reason why we may look like we've gone back big time, as this commenter has said. But the truth is, we were not running the farm in Canna completely debt-free. And that's the truth that many broadacre croppers and mixed farming operations will not tell you, is that do they come away with a profit every year? Sometimes. But with hit and miss farming country, and if you have multiple mediocre to bad years in a row from 2017 onwards, and you have overdraft after overdraft after overdraft, it's like a tractor bogging in sand. But that sand, every spin of those tyres is more debt. And that overdraft digs you deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So, the truth that I didn't state in the Nelly Creek series in 2021 was 2019 was a pretty bad year. We didn't have very good yielding crops, and we've barely scratched by. Dad did the budget in 2019-2020 summer, and it was very close to $1 million, like 50 grand off $1 million in overdraft if we kept going in the same 2,500 hectare cropping program that we would have been doing. And that's including all the space that would have been fallowed and sheep as well. 5,989 hectares, that's how big the farm was. And while that may sound big in acreage as well, that was 14,800 at its absolute maximum, our farming enterprise up there was actually one of the smaller operations compared to what's up there now, because those farms up there, some of them are getting so big to the point where they're 30,000 acres. That's big, and not many of those farmers are actually running completely debt free. Most of them have very heavy overdrafts. So when I first got this GoPro and I started filming in 2020, even though that footage is now lost to time, we actually pulled back on the cropping program quite substantially from where we were, and that's because we were trying to tighten the budget as much as we can, and we actively chose to go back big time. Because if we kept going the way we were and we got wiped out in a year like 2023, that would have been it. That would have been the end of our farming operation. In 2021, when we got wiped out by the cyclone, the bank said good luck with the cleanup and left us to it. They said they wouldn't lend us any more money to help with the cleanup. And that was the final straw. That was when we really decided that the cyclone was our ticket out of there. Sure, while it may look like we have gone back big time since we moved to where we are now, we're doing something that we've never been able to achieve at Canna. And that's owning the farm and 99% of the equipment completely debt-free. The only pieces of machinery that are financed are the sprayer, which has one payment left to go, and the gator, which has 2 payments left to go. And I'll be very glad when both of them are fully paid off, because that's one less expense for us to worry about, and we can focus a bit more on investing in the infrastructure to eventually build up the soils again, build up more sheds, so we can have more equipment again. That's the flaws we've been having. Even well before we knew that all this stuff was going to go on with the live export ban and all this jazz, even before that, we knew that this was going to be a very long-term project before the farm would actually start making some money. That's why we're going to stick through it. And I am going to ensure to the very end that this farm will turn around and become profitable, completely debt-free, outright. Sorry for the rant. I know it's late at night when I'm recording this, but I've been thinking about this all day. Right, so what's going to happen next in the video? On Monday, which is where the video is going to close, we will be saying goodbye to the dries and the sheep prices. Now, there's been a hullabaloo in the sheep industry as of late. Most of my subscribers who happen to be in the WA sheep industry, we would all know that on the 15th of July, the phase-out funding for the phasing out of live sheep exports was revealed. Now, out of that, they're only spending $30 million on the farmers and taking grants of up to $75,000 and only giving a measly 40 grand per license holder for the truckies. All I can say is, if our worst fears are confirmed and the 75 grand will only be given to us if we're completely getting rid of our sheep, I'm standing firm in saying this. Stuff the phase out. We're going to keep the sheep. As I stated in the video that I filmed just before the election, talking about why we need to keep the sheep. As I stated in that video, the higher sheep prices are due to the fact that Victoria and South Australia are still in drought. Their sheep numbers are going to be low. The lack of supply is going to make the demand rise up, combined with the floods that the farmers in Queensland and New South Wales have experienced earlier this year. Most of their sheep and cattle numbers got washed away in those terrible, terrible floods. Again, to my fellow farmers over there, we're praying for you guys. Hope that conditions get much better for you. But still, they're doing it tough. Everyone in agriculture in Australia is not happy as Larry at the moment. If South Australia and Victoria come out of drought next year, they're going to want to buy sheep from WA, so the prices are going to go even higher than they already are. Combined with the fact that because of the drought conditions that we experienced in 2023-2024 summer, and some people were forced to destroy their sheep, which is something that was very heartbreaking to do for some people. And not many people joined their ewes and rams last year, so the amount of blue tags and black tags that are going to come through into the sale yards, their value is going to go up through the roof. And this is going to carry the sheep price for the next 2 to 3 years. In regard to the phase out, I'm standing firm on this. Keep the Sheep was never about replacing the government. Keep the Sheep was about standing with our rural communities and reversing this ridiculous, unrealistic ban on what is otherwise a world-leading standards in animal welfare industry, and a lucrative one at that. Why I say that it's unrealistic is because none of the brand new abattoirs that are supposedly going to be opened by 2028, none of the foundations have been laid yet. None. And realistically, if that was going to happen, they'd need to lay those concrete foundations 2 years before Murray Watt made that announcement to phase out live sheep exports. So the market is not going to be there. There's not going to be enough of a market for sheep post-2028. So with the amount of people that have already left the industry, of course the demand is going to be up, and it's going to remain like that for a couple of years. When the sheep numbers recover and when the ban possibly comes into effect, which is a grim reality that we're potentially going to face unless we continue the fight to reverse the ban. What if scenario that is potentially likely that the ban goes ahead, there is still not going to be enough of a market demographic for us to send our surplus wethers off to. So people are going to pull out of sheep, decrease their sheep numbers and go into something else like cropping, or God forbid, sell up their land to renewables. The phase out is still unrealistic. 30 million divided by 3,000 is 75 grand. They're expecting farmers to get rid of all their sheep and have all of the surplus infrastructure that costs way more than 75 grand to do what? Because 75 grand is a drop in the bucket when it comes to cropping. In the what if scenario, if they let us have this 75 grand to start transitioning away from sheep without actually getting rid of the sheep, all that 75 grand would do would go towards flattening the racetrack and refinating it, and that's it. We'd be back to square one again because that's how fast the funds go. If people really think that 75 grand's going to be enough to help these farmers like me, it's a laugh, honestly. If all the farmers in West Australia that have sheep and haven't transitioned and don't want to transition, if they're giving us a measly 75 grand to get rid of our passion in life, we're not giving up sheep. No way. And no amount of money in the world is going to replace the blood, sweat and tears that we've put into this industry and what our ancestors have put into the industry. Australia was, once upon a time, built on the sheep's back. And while merinos may not be in common play as they once were, we're still not going to get rid of the sheep. Someone has to continue the build-up, the legacy that our ancestors built. Otherwise, if my grandfather and what my great-grandfather, who took his family over to Canna and paid Pinawar Station off completely from the wall clip in 1947, if he saw what was going to happen now, do you think he'd really still go through all that trouble to continue farming, and would Pop really go towards all that effort of clearing Nelly Creek in the first place and building a family legacy? To build that farm you see in the photos there, no amount of money can ever replace family legacies like that. And that's the reason why, whether Labor's won the election or not, I don't care who's in government. If they can kiss my ass for all I care, I don't care. All I care about is keeping the sheep, keeping this family legacy that my ancestors have built up alive, keeping my community alive. I don't care about politics. All I care about is preserving all of this hard work that they spent years and years and years trying to build up. If we get rid of all of that, what's going to be left? Sure, the merino is not as prominent as it once was. I'm not denying that. And if we really have to, I'd be interested in actually going into the crossbreed business if it's more lucrative than actual purebred merinos, if we absolutely have to, because that's the way farmers have to adapt to survive. We are not going to be stuck in the past, but we are going to learn from the past and the good bits about that past, we are going to work hard to preserve for the future. Good morning. You join us on Monday morning. It's the final week of July. It's going to be August on Friday. Ridiculously quick this year's gone. And as I stated in the previous video, we've drafted off all the dries. Now the dries, they've not eaten as much pellets, but regardless of how much pellets they've eaten or not today, we got John from Veggie Transport with the sheep bus coming over here to come pick up the dries. And there's all the other woolly passengers on board. Now, as you can see, the drafting pen right before the actual race is completely filled with water. And the reason for that is because, well, the weatherman lied again. We were told that we were going to be expecting 10 to 15 mils of rain yesterday. What we actually got instead was 40 mil over the whole course of yesterday and into last night. 40 mils is what was in the gauge this morning when Dad checked it. So regardless, we had to draft all of these girls in the rain yesterday to pull out the 4 that we were going to keep for our killers, as well as one that needed to be crutched, and they are not in a very cooperative mood this morning. I do apologise for that, everyone. As you can see, the sheep are very troublesome this morning. Some people may be looking at the sheep and the yards here and probably going, where's Bendy Sue? Well, Bendy Sue's locked up in the house at the moment because, well, last time we had them in the yards, Bendy was pushing them a bit too much and they were starting to roll in the water, which is not very good because sheep do not like water. That's the reason why they've been very hesitant this morning on going through that pen into the loading race. You can see over there, they're crowding around in that corner, but they're trying their best to avoid the water. That's natural sheep instincts right there. Some people may look at this and say, well, wouldn't you ideally have a drainage in here?
Yeah, well, where are you going to drain it to?
Precisely. Because if we were to have any drains or like a sewage pipe going underneath the yards, that would be an overly complicated and expensive and not very thought through idea. Of course, some people may also say, well, why not just wait for the yards to dry up before loading the sheep on the truck? Well, we're on a time crunch here. If we do that, then the ewes will be here in September, and by that time, the price will be completely different from where it is now. We can't justify the cost of keeping them here when we could put them on the truck right now to go turn them off for a bit of money at M.I.A. Of course, some of these girls have wool on them. Whoever buys these, they're probably going to get some wool off them and make some money out of it. Now, the sheep that are consisting of our dries, they're purple, yellow, red and blue tags. Now, the blue tags, they'd still be classed as our M.I.A. However, because we are planning to cut back on our sheep numbers, because we're going to put some more cropping hectares in next year, we're going to be cutting back our sheep numbers from 600 head to 400 head for breeding. This is also due to the other factors that we're restricted to on this farm. Come on, girls. Come on. See you, sheep. Thank you. Goodbye. Have a nice trip. So there go 134 of the dries. They'll be going off to M.I.A. and we'll find out tomorrow what they bring. Now, sheep prices, as we know, are pretty high in WA at the moment. If sheep are in really good nick and they're dries, they could fetch up to upwards of 220 bucks a head. But because ours have only been in bull paddock for about 2 weeks, and they've been camping near the rams instead of going onto the pellets, they've only just started eating the pellets. And well, as you've seen, they're off on the truck now. So, and due to the fact they're wet, it also makes them look skinny for some of them as well. So we're not entirely sure if they're gonna get that much, but it would be nice. It is sad seeing some of them go, particularly the purples and the yellows. Those were the final Nelly sheep, which were the last sheep to be born on the previous farm. And when they were lambs, very little lambs, they would have taken a truck ride here and spent most of their lives here. But once the last of the yellows and the purples are gone, that'll be that. No more Nelly sheep, they'll all be Erinvale sheep. Now, as for events coming up this year. Last year I attempted to go to Dowerin Field Days, and the year before we actually did end up going to Dowerin Field Days. In 2023, I actually went as part of representing the school that I attended down in Perth. They kindly let me, Jacko, and a couple of the other boys go cause some chaos at Dowerin, run around, jump in all sorts of different machines. It was a whole lot of fun. I tried to do the same last year, but as we know, which is a really stupid thing, I know, considering we're in Australia, it gets hot, hydration is essential, but I fainted last year, as we already know. A lot of you who would have watched the channel for the first time when we were at the sheep sales, that ram sale last year, you would know that I fainted, and a lot of people have said some kind things about that. So thank you once again to everyone who did that. We're definitely gonna make a fair go at trying to get to Dowerin this year, and this time around I'm going to be well hydrated. We'll still catch up with Jacko and Sam and the other boys as well,